quickly check. I will admit everyone. Cool. So we should be joined by some attendees. So for those of you that are joining us here today, hi and welcome to the QLDC webinar on the Draft Freedom Camping Bylaw 2025. I'm Campbell from QLDC. I'm a comms advisor here. I'm going to introduce the two presenters who will be joining us today, and you'll be hearing from them soon as well. That's Luke Place, who is a Principal Policy Advisor, and Amy Galloway, the Responsible Camping Program Manager. We're also joined by Carrie Williams, the Policy Manager, and Marie Day, our Community Partnerships Manager. So just quickly to run through what we're going to cover in this webinar today. Amy and Luke will run through the basics of the draft bylaw, and at the end we'll have some time for questions and answers as well. So up the top of the window you should see the little Q&A field up there where you can submit a question if you have anything throughout the webinar, and then come the end of the webinar we'll try to go through as many of them as possible in the time allowed. I think we've also got a few questions potentially that have been pre-supplied or that we've been working on, so we will try to answer those too. And if for whatever reason you have to leave early or you miss something, the meeting will be recorded as well, so you should get a link to that, but we will also upload it after this is done. So thank you for joining us. Please submit if you haven't already after this webinar, and I'll hand over to Luke and Amy to run through the Draft Freedom Camping Bylaw 2025. Thank you.
Thanks, Campbell. Yes, hello everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on the Draft Freedom Camping Bylaw. Hopefully everybody can see my deck of slides before we carry on. So we'll start by running over the important stuff, which is how you can make a submission. We'll run over these again at the end, so don't worry if you miss them, but by online, through post, or via email via our Let's Talk inbox. And the important date for your diaries is Friday the 8th of August. That's when formal submissions close for the Draft Freedom Camping Bylaw. On today's agenda for the webinar, we'll go over the background of freedom camping in the Queenstown Lakes District, why we need a freedom camping bylaw, what we considered when we were drafting the freedom camping bylaw, what it proposes, our proposals for urban and rural roads, our proposals for specific restrictions, and finally how to get involved. Look.
Thanks, Amy. Hello, everyone. So just in terms of background, there's two really important starting points that we want to bring to your attention. The first relates to the Freedom Camping Act 2011. And the starting point for that, for us, is that all freedom camping in self-contained vehicles or tents is permitted on QLDC controlled or managed land. And the second is under the Reserves Act 1977, which prohibits camping on any land that's classified as reserves. So that's most of our local parks and open spaces. So yeah, those are two really important starting points that set the scene for how we address freedom camping. And also really importantly is the Freedom Camping Act sets out a definition of what freedom camping is. So I'll read it here. So freedom camping means to camp other than at a campground within 200 metres of an area accessible by motor vehicle or on or within 200 metres of a formed road or a Great Walks track using either a tent or temporary structure or a motor vehicle. So anything that doesn't fall within that definition isn't considered freedom camping and isn't managed under the Freedom Camping Act or under any freedom camping bylaw. Next slide.
So to give you some background on freedom camping in the Queenstown Lakes, if you're a camper and you visit Queenstown Lakes, this is what you can expect. We've got one formal NZTA freedom camping site, and what by formal I mean it's sort of widely recognised as a freedom camping spot and pinpointed on CamperMate and on Google and various other camping apps. We've got 13 Department of Conservation camping areas. Now these are either free or low cost. It's worth noting that 2 of them this year are now under a commercial lease, and then we have 18 commercial campsites and holiday parks, We've one official QLDC freedom camping spot. That's the Luggett Red Bridge site. That's a product of the previous 2021 bylaw. And then as of this year, there's one New Zealand Motor Caravan Association campsite in Glenorchy. And then we've got some stats down the bottom here. So the Queenstown Lakes is the most popular destination for free overnight camping in New Zealand. And we estimate this district sees double the amount of freedom campers that the next most popular district in New Zealand sees. We expect that that number is likely to grow over the coming years. And if you were here before COVID, you'll know that freedom camping took off in a big way. And between 2008 and 2018, international visitors, freedom camping in the country rose from 10,000 to 123,000.
So why do we need a bylaw? QLDC's elected members determined that a freedom camping bylaw is needed to regulate the impacts of freedom camping in the district with respect to those three matters that are set out within Section 11 of the Freedom Camping Act that are set out at the top of the slide. So the Act allows us to create a bylaw where we think it's needed to protect the area, to protect health and safety of people who visit the area, and protect access to the area. And by area, what we mean is areas of land that are owned or managed by QLDC, controlled or managed, by QLDC. And a really important part of the wider story of our bylaw is that our 2021 bylaw, so that was our previous freedom camping bylaw, was quashed by the High Court following a judicial review application, and that High Court decision provided some really important findings in terms of the interpretation of the Freedom Camping Act and what we can consider in and out of scope when we make a freedom camping bylaw. And importantly, it sets out that any effect on adjoining private land is not able to be managed by a freedom camping bylaw. So all that's within scope is land that's controlled or managed by QLDC and potentially NZTA land with the approval of the Chief Executive of NZTA. So what that means at the moment is that we don't have a freedom camping bylaw in effect, and in the meantime, what we've been doing is managing freedom camping in the district using the default position in the Freedom Camping Act and using the Reserves Act as well. But we also have a really comprehensive responsible camping program that works to educate campers and tries to reduce instances of poor behaviour. But despite this, we know that freedom camping does have an impact on our community if it's not appropriately managed. And as we all know, visitor numbers are continuing to rebound following COVID-19, and more people are likely to visit our district and will undertake freedom camping. So without a freedom camping bylaw, we know that we are going to not quite have the right tools available to us to manage freedom camping and the impacts of freedom camping on all of the land that QLDC controls or manages with respect to protecting the particular values of the areas that QLDC controls or manages, the access to that land and the health and safety of users to that land as well. Next slide. So in terms of the considerations to the things that we've thought about in developing our draft freedom camping bylaw, it's been informed by a comprehensive technical analysis across a range of different areas of different technical disciplines, and those are listed down there. They include traffic and transport, health and safety, natural hazards, ecology, water quality and quantity, water services, noise, Māori cultural values, and heritage as well. So all of these things have been taken into account in terms of those three matters that I talked about earlier under Section 11 of the Freedom Camping Act. In addition to those, the draft bylaw has been informed by a range of other important information, including requests for service applications that QLDC receives from members of the public, a lot of information from our summer responsible camping ambassadors during the previous summer periods, and a range of different other stakeholder inputs from across the organisation, for example. Next slide. So some key definitions under the bylaw and the Freedom Camping Act that are really worth understanding. So the first one is prohibited freedom camping areas. So these are areas where freedom camping is not allowed. Freedom camping can't take place under the draft bylaw. It's prevented. And second is restricted freedom camping areas. So these are areas where freedom camping is allowed, subject to the conditions set out in the draft bylaw, and that includes the likes of you only are allowed to use a certified self-contained motor vehicle. And there's a range of other conditions as well that are set out in the draft bylaw that people will have to comply with in order to freedom camp in accordance with the draft bylaw. Next slide.
Okay, so I'll give you a top line of what the draft bylaw proposes. So, and we'll go into these all in further detail. So we're proposing that freedom camping would be restricted in 15 specific locations across the district, that freedom camping would be restricted on rural roads subject to some conditions. Freedom camping would be prohibited on our urban roads and built up areas. The draft bylaw also proposes that QLDC may temporarily prohibit, restrict or change conditions on one of these restricted freedom camping areas to allow us a little bit more flexibility if there are issues during summer. And QLDC may provide consent to temporarily freedom camp in an area where this activity is otherwise prohibited or restricted. And what we usually use that clause for is if there's an event visiting the district and perhaps they require an overnight pack-in, they can request this consent to freedom camp in an area that's otherwise prohibited. On urban roads, so to go into a bit more detail, roads in the district's urban areas are marked as prohibited for freedom camping. Now, this does include any on-street parking, such as parallel parking or angled parking on those streets. We identified the urban roads as being in residential areas, commercial and business areas, and town centres. So really just our built up residential and commercial areas. And here's an example of one of the maps you'll see in the bylaw of all the urban roads in Wanaka. And then to move on to rural roads. So rural roads in the district have been identified as restricted for freedom camping. So that means that freedom camping could be allowed on these roads, but the campers must comply with specific conditions. So, and mainly that the freedom camping must take place off the road corridor. So on the rural roads, campers shouldn't just assume that they can park up on any rural road without first checking that they can meet these conditions. So most importantly, that you must use a certified self-contained vehicle. That means have a valid warrant displayed on your windscreen, not just a bumper sticker. You must ensure that the vehicle is 5 meters away from the road corridor and that another vehicle can safely pull in alongside you. You must ensure the motor vehicle is on a sealed surface such as gravel or tarmac, not on grass to protect our areas, and all your camping equipment must be contained within 2 meters of the motor vehicle. You must not stay for 2 nights, more than 2 nights in a 30-day period. You must not leave any waste, and you must not light any fires outside the motor vehicle. And here's an example of a map of the rural roads in the Whakatipu area. Okay, and our specific restricted freedom camping areas. So we've identified 15 locations for restricted freedom camping. That's 4 in the Upper Clutha and 11 in the Whakatipu, and that equates to 158 spaces for freedom campers to use with specific conditions. And some of these specific conditions are listed here. So again, you must use a certified self-contained vehicle with a valid warrant displayed. You must use one of the marked spaces that we'll map out with paint and with signage. You must not arrive in the space before a specific time, and you must not leave. You must leave the space by a specific time, and this is to provide for equal access to these spaces for all users of these either parking or recreational areas. You must ensure the camping equipment is contained within the parking space. Again, you must not stay for more than 2 nights within a 30-day period. You must not leave any waste or light any fires outside the motor vehicle. And here's an example of the Boundary Street car park in Queenstown Central. As you can see, we've marked the whole car park in yellow for restricted, but under the conditions, it says 15 marked spaces, so we will mark out those spaces. So not the whole car park, just 15 of the spaces that we mark out, and you must use one of those spaces. You'll see the surrounding roads are highlighted in orange for prohibited because it's in the Queenstown CBD, and the adjoining sports field is prohibited for freedom camping under the Reserves Act. And then at this stage, I'm actually going to stop sharing my slides and show you where you can see these maps in more detail. So I'm on the Let's Talk page for the Draft Freedom Camping Bylaw. This is where you can also use our online form to make a submission. And if you scroll down to the interactive map and agree to the terms and conditions, you can zoom in and see the full picture of the district. So here I am in Queenstown, and you've got to bear with us. The map looks up loads of different parcels of land and all the elements relating to that, so it does take a little while to load. So you'll see the prohibited areas are marked in orange and our restricted areas in yellow. And then this purple hatching is the reserves, which are out of scope of the bylaw, but we wanted to paint a full picture of what freedom camping would look like. So anything in this purple hatching is prohibited for freedom camping under the Reserves Act. And then once we go out of town, you'll see the rural roads start. If you're interested to know about a particular location, you can use this navigation on the right-hand side to navigate to a location. So say I want to see a little bit more about the Wanaka Recreation Centre, I can click on it and it navigates me to the Wanaka Recreation Centre, and also helpfully, just waiting for the yellow to load, it helpfully brings up the conditions that we've proposed on the left-hand side there, so you can see the specific locations, restrictions for that location. And let's see, where else? If I go to Flint Street in Arrowtown next. And just give it a little second to load. You can see it highlights the location, and again, the restrictions on the other side, on the left-hand side there. If you're interested to know about a specific location, you can type in to the navigation bar at the top here. And again, press search or highlight it, click on it, and it gives me a little bit more information. It's an urban road and prohibited for freedom camping. So that is the map, and I'd encourage you all to have a good look at it. It's a really useful tool, and I'll just quickly share back to my slides now. But I think we're almost at the end. Yes, and how you can get involved. I think I had you down for this slide, look.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so yeah, we're really keen to hear from as many people as possible about what you think about the draft bylaw, what you think we've got right, what you'd like to see change, and if you've got any other ideas about how you think we can manage freedom camping in the most effective and efficient way. So we have a online survey that's available on the Let's Talk and on our Let's Talk page, and the website's just there. But you're also welcome to post in your submissions or email at the address there, or email them to our Let's Talk email address listed here. Make sure you just put in Freedom Camping Bylaw as your subject line. And yeah, importantly, the submissions close on the 8th of August, so very keen to hear from everyone about what they think about the draft bylaw. Oh, just another note as well, on the Let's Talk webpage, there's lots of information on there, including the draft bylaw, our statement of proposal, and the technical assessment that was done to support the draft bylaw as well, if you want to have a look at that. so you'll find all the key documents on there if you want to have a deep dive into what's available. Thanks very much. I'll turn it over to Marie.
Thanks, Luke. We've had a few questions come through. So what I'm going to do is just read those questions out and ask Amy or Luke to respond to them. So if you do have any other questions that you've just thought of, please write them in the Q&A, and I'll go through them as we get to them. So the first question is for Amy, and that is, where is the NZTA site you mentioned earlier located, and which 2 dock sites have private leases now?
So the dock sites with commercial license leases is Moog Lake and the 12 Mile Delta, both in Queenstown, and the NZTA site is on the State Highway 6 out to Kingston, between on the sort of past the Devil's Staircase on the way to Kingston by the lakefront. I suppose it's about 10 minutes from Kingston.
Thanks, Amy. Next question. Is the Responsible Camping Education Program run all year round or only in summer?
We run it through sort of mid-November to the end of April till we but after the Easter holidays, usually we wrap it up. We do see the numbers of freedom camping start to drop from that point. Gets a little bit colder, I suppose. So yeah, just for about 6 months of the year we run it.
Thanks, Amy. Luke, the next one is, because tent camping is allowed by the Freedom Camping Act, have you specifically prohibited tent camping across all of the region?
Yes, that's right. So freedom camping in tents isn't provided for in any part of the district, under the bylaw. So it's just certified self-contained vehicles that are provided for within any of the restricted rural roads, and also within any of the specific restricted areas that are identified in the bylaw. However, if camping in a tent has taken place outside of the definition that I read earlier that's set out under the bylaw, then it isn't captured by the bylaw or the Freedom Camping Act, so it can take place.
Thanks, Luke. I'll pass this next question to you as well. What if the feedback from submissions is strongly against these proposals? What is Plan B?
Sorry, Mary, did you say that was for me?
Yes, Luke.
Yeah. So as I said before, we're really keen to hear from anyone who has any thoughts on the draft bylaw. What the intention is for submissions is that we'll consider each of them, and I'll prepare a report in collaboration with my colleagues, and that will be presented to the hearing panel that's made up of councillors, and they'll make a determination as to, or they'll make recommendations actually to our full council in terms of what things they might like to see changed in the draft bylaw. So if there are a range of submissions that are made in opposition, those will be carefully considered by the hearings panel. It's difficult to say, what specific change will be made, because we have to think about what topics they relate to, but they'll certainly be giving careful consideration to any submission which is made on the bylaw.
Can I just chime in there, Marie? Just adding on to what Luke said is that, the statement of proposal which goes out with the bylaw gives council the ability to make changes based on what has gone to the community for consultation, as long as it's sort of within the scope of what was proposed. So that's on the table. The second point to make there is that it's always an option for council in regards to any bylaw or any issue to choose to proceed a different way. That we are open for consultation right now, but just want to be really clear what the breadth of the options there are for the council when it comes to making a decision on this. Though would reiterate how Luke outlined at the beginning that the council has made it clear that a bylaw is needed to regulate the issues with freedom camping.
Thanks, Kerry. The next question I'll go to Luke again. How can the QLDC have prohibited rules if the bylaw was quashed by the court? If council can have prohibited rules, why can't the council just prohibit all urban areas?
Yeah, so I'll start off with that last bit. So the Freedom Camping Act specifically sets out that councils can't simply apply blanket prohibition across all of their districts. So the starting point is that freedom camping is provided everywhere, apart from on reserves under the Freedom Camping Act. So so it's sort of like we have to act in the reverse to demonstrate that we need to take action either in the form of a restricted area or a prohibited area with when there is a demonstrated need to protect the area access or health and safety. And so I think the first part of the question related to the High Court decision. So the High Court decision, which was in response to a judicial review application, it related more to the things that council had taken into account when it was identifying areas to be controlled under the draft bylaw. It wasn't so much about what proportion of land was prohibited or permissive rather. It was about the fact that we had considered impacts on privately owned land or adjoining businesses and adjoining neighbours in terms of amenity and economic impacts, and those are things that are outside of the scope of the Freedom Camping Act and can't be taken into account when we're developing freedom camping bylaws. So so yeah, that's a piece of clarification there.
Right. Carrie, did you want to add anything else to that question?
No, I think that covers it. I mean, I'm just reading the question to make sure that we've answered it properly because it is a tricky one. If the question relates to how we can have prohibited rules now in the absence of a bylaw, that was covered earlier insofar as the default in the Reserves Act does not allow camping on reserved land, if that's what that question relates to, clarifying that. And so obviously that just relates to reserved land not being able to put any type of prohibition on all urban areas, but I may be interpreting that one differently, but I think you've covered it, Luke. Thanks.
Thanks. There is another question here from Andrea. Are the police going to enforce this? I believe it may relate to an earlier question. You may want to just reword that, Andrea. But in relation to the police enforcing, the police do not enforce the bylaw. That is something QLDC will do through our regulatory team. But if the question is slightly different, please read into that. I'll just go to the next question here, which is, so a 2-night stay at that spot or in the region in general? They're a bit out of order. I'm sorry, some of these questions, so I'm not quite clear on what question you're asking. Andrea, again, if you can just reword that one. Next question, have you assessed how many off-road areas with 5 metre distance from the rural road with suitable safe hard stand on your rural road map might meet these restrictions? Luke, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, sure. So the short answer is no, we don't know exactly how many specific locations might be available to freedom campers to meet that condition. But the going back to what the Freedom Camping Act allows us to control, it's about health and safety and access. So it's not just the Freedom Camping Act and the draft bylaw isn't necessarily about providing a specific quantum of sites or meeting demand. It's simply comes down to whether a bylaw is necessary to control to rather protect health and safety access or the area. So the intent behind that is the 5 metre distance is to make sure that there's sufficient distance of any freedom camper from the active road corridor, but also to provide location for others to pull over and lay by areas should they need to for health and safety or other access reasons.
Thanks, Luke. We'll go to the next one here. I'll give this to Amy. When marking out parking spaces for restricted camping, will the areas be larger than a basic car park? Will they be spread around an area to allow larger camping vehicles to open doors, plus have at least 1.5 metre separation between vehicles for safe parking as per fire safety recommendations?
The majority of the parking spaces that we are recommending are already mapped out as parking spaces. In the Boundary Street car park, for example, there are camper van specific oversized parking spaces specific for camper vans, but the majority of our car parks are just regular sized camper vans, and they will already be marked out as per the car park.
Thanks, Amy. Next question for Luke, similar to the earlier one, but slightly different question. There are many rural roads which would not be suitable due to the 5 metre gravel conditions. I understand it's a big task to assess all rural roads, but is this on the to-do list?
I think that's probably more of an operational sort of question, but it's certainly not part of the immediate analysis that we're going to be doing to develop the draft bylaw. It might be something that council considers moving forward. Marie, if you want to, Marie or Amy, but like I said earlier, it's not necessarily about identifying these areas specifically for freedom camping. It's actually about making sure that the conditions are right and fit for purpose wherever they are in the district, to make sure that it's protecting health and safety and access in this instance.
Yeah, and just to, sorry to jump in, but just to reiterate that freedom campers have a responsibility themselves to make sure that the rural road that they have meets those conditions, just as you take a certain amount of self-responsibility when you're parking your car and adhering to the Road Transport Act rules, for example. So I think yeah, sorry, that was an unformed thought, but I'll stop there.
Okay. Thanks, Amy. Okay, we'll go on to the next question here. So that is probably one I'll give to Carrie, if that's okay, just to give Luke a break. Recognising NZMCA's legal action under the restrictions that most locals wanted. If we need to host vans in car parks, why are we not looking at offering portable toilets and showers and Wi-Fi for a fee on site? Coin-operated options exist. Rather than expecting them to use the cassette toilets, which we know they don't, why not give some local businesses the chance to run user-pays facilities? It could be an to Amy.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think I'm going to let Amy go for that one.
Okay, yes, sure. Once I got to the end, Amy.
Yeah, sure. I mean, some of our local businesses do provide user-pays facilities. You know, you can pay for a shower in some of the hostels, or buy a coffee and use the laundrette at the same time. So, those facilities do exist as part of the wider responsible camping program. We have the responsible camping strategy, which does call for council officers to explore user-pays facilities for campers. At the moment, there's no further infrastructure provided as part of this bylaw, but it is a separate work stream that we're looking into, and we'd really love for more businesses to provide user pays facilities for campers, like showers, or perhaps hostels, can let campers use their kitchens for a fee during their down hours or something like that, just off the top. And I know there are companies that do provide for these sort of these facilities. So yeah, it is not part of the bylaw, but a separate work stream that we will be looking into.
And I would
Amy.
just add to that before Marie carries on that would be great feedback to provide a submission on, support for alternative camping, because that, strictly speaking, that type of offering isn't freedom camping, but submissions saying that that's a good direction to move in would be really helpful.
Thanks, Kerry. There's just one from Chris. Neither of the proposed restricted sites for Makarora are showing on the interactive map. Where can I see these, please? So that's, Amy, probably something we'll have to look at and send along with the recording, Chris. So we'll probably don't have time right now, but I'll get Amy to.
Yeah.
Yep,
Sorry,
Amy.
there is no proposed restricted sites in Makarora, but there are two rural roads marked out, I believe is probably what you're referring to. So it might just be taking a little while to load, but yeah, I can get back to you with that specific information.
Thanks, Amy. What is NZMCA going to contribute to the monitoring of things? Because if numbers are expected to be huge, I can probably answer
for them.
Yeah, Andrea, that is a question for the New Zealand Motor Caravan Association. But ultimately, we're talking here about council's responsibilities in relation to the bylaw. Just going into the next round of questions. One moment. A few coming through here. Okay, so the next one is, has some thought and discussion been given to having a bylaw with two tiers, one for New Zealand residents and one with more restrictions for non-New Zealanders? Luke, would you like to respond to that one, please?
Sure, yeah. No, we haven't given consideration to that. It's not something that, in my view, the Freedom Camping Act would allow us to. Basically, it's our scope of what the Freedom Camping Act would allow us to consider. We're only allowed to make provisions in the bylaw for those three things that I set out earlier, and you know, whether it's a New Zealand resident or a non-New Zealand resident, doesn't fit into any of those three Section 11 matters.
Thanks, Luke. Okay. Just going to, might be a little bit out of order. This is from Andrea. This is regarding the rules for campers in the new restricted areas, stating that you cannot stay more than 2 nights within a 30-day period. Is that just for the specific spot within 500 metres? Luke, do you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I'm just looking at, so regarding rules for campers in new restricted areas stated. Yeah, so in the specific restricted areas, I don't think that the bylaw has the just going back to my bylaw to have a look at the specific restricted areas. So yeah, the 500 meter rule doesn't apply to the specific restricted areas, just the a couple of, well, there's a couple that do, I think, but not all of the car parking areas, and it, in particular it relates to the rural roads. So I'm sorry, I'm not quite, perhaps you'll need to reframe your question, Andrea. I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Can I just jump in there, because going back to Andrea's previous question, just generally, can we make a comment on the 2-night restrictions in some of those proposed locations? Like, what does that mean for the average person using that site? Can they use that site 2 nights in a 30-day period, or is it 2 nights in a row and then, you know, they can come back for another 2 nights? Or can they do 2 nights in one location and then 2 nights in another? I think that might help answer it. Oh
yeah, sure. So you can, in any of the specific restricted areas, in particular, you can stay for 2 nights. But as per the most of the specific restricted areas have hours that you have to leave by or arrive by, and so you could return for 2 nights, but during those hours when the space needs to be free, you can't park there. Yeah, so that should provide some clarity on how that works.
Okay, thanks, Luke. I'll just go on to the next one. If providing these restricted car park spaces, is this effectively allowing overnight parking, not meeting the needs of freedom camping under the allowable act? How do you ensure safety in these car parks if used by larger vehicles and caravans, etc., if you put them all up against each other? I think that refers to the earlier question about not having a larger car park for camper vans. Amy, did you want to tackle that one? Or I can.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I have anything else to add from my previous comments about it. The parking spaces as are is, and we're providing them for freedom camping. As part of a separate work stream, council is investigating what other low-cost camping options we could have in other areas of land, which might provide more of a like, I don't know, relaxed camping experience, I suppose, if that's what people are after, with a little bit more space. But the spaces are existing spaces. The car parks are already marked out. We'll have in terms of managing them, we'll have our summer ambassadors going around in the mornings, and then before people set up in the evenings, and chatting to them and making sure that people aren't overutilizing the space, I suppose. If you're in a large camper van, again, that's your responsibility to make sure that you can fit in one of the spaces, I suppose.
Thanks, Amy. Just following on from that, Amy, there's a question: will the QLDC regulatory team be able to move people on if they do not meet the requirements of the site rules?
Well, the enforcement officers do work in the nighttime hours, so our summer ambassadors will front foot some of those questions. If they spot somebody who has broken one of the rules, say it's not a self-contained vehicle, they'll kindly say to them, you have to be certified self-contained with a valid warrant displayed to use this space. Here are a few commercial campsites you can use, or low-cost campsites for a small fee. So they will make that recommendations to people. If people then do not move on, then they are in breach of the bylaw and can receive an infringement for breaking one of those conditions. So we want everybody to be well informed of the rules, and we always have that friendly education approach to behaviour change. But the bylaw is in there to give us a regulatory measure should people not comply.
Thanks, Amy. There's a question here regarding the Luggett Red Bridge site. So again, this is from Judy. The Luggett Red Bridge Reserve is not included in the bylaw, but we will continue to use this as a freedom camping location separate to the bylaw. There's some questions there from Judy, concerns about the non-self-contained vehicles that might be staying there and their behaviour of some of the people staying on the site, and also the numbers. So Amy, I don't know if you just want to just briefly talk about just the work we're wanting to do around Luggett Red Bridge.
Yeah, so the Luggett Red Bridge again can be checked for non-self-containment or not valid warrants on nighttime patrols. Again, the summer ambassadors manage it from a daytime point of view, and chat to people. So we do have those measures in place for them. In terms of the numbers, that is something we're looking into. I appreciate that it's been really busy, certainly for the past 2 summers, with visitor numbers growing again. So that is a separate piece of work that we're looking into, is how can we control the numbers so it's a more pleasant experience for the community and for campers, and limit the numbers, because it was quite overcrowded on peak summer. I do admit that.
Thanks, Amy. Just the next question is just a point related to an earlier comment, I think, regarding facilities, again, like paid facilities. So again, this is from Terry. We are looking at different options, as Amy mentioned, and we certainly have had conversations with some of those providers of different portable facilities. I'm just going to make sure we haven't missed any other ones. There are so many holiday parks in the region. Is more advertising required by these to educate locals and visitors that you can pay a fee and use the facilities? Amy, do you want to respond
Yeah,
to that
so
one?
you know, we're really keen for people to use one of our great commercial campsites across the district, not just to, you know, as an option to freedom camping, not just because of you know, the great facilities that some of them have and the great experience that you can have if you do want to pay for one of the campsites in the district. So what we, from a resourcing point of view, we'll update the GIS maps with responsible camping sites, but also with the commercial campsites across the district. And we also do a printed pamphlet, and also our word of mouth engagement from our summer ambassadors can talk about some of the great facilities that our campsites have across the district, and you know, what a great holiday experience it can be to use one of them.
Thanks, Amy. How do you expect campers to leave by 7 or 8 a.m. and how will you actually police this? Amy, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so it'll be that two-pronged approach as well, which will be the summer ambassadors. They usually start at 7 a.m. In the morning, you know, so there is the piece there of reminding people that the time restrictions are there to provide equitable access to the car parking areas, not just for community members, but for visitors as well. Some of these areas that we've proposed are very busy for various reasons. So we'll have the summer ambassadors there, and then there's the regulatory enforcement as required. If people aren't complying. I think with enforcement, we can have quite a flexible approach to enforcement. We've got our patrol routes that we take, but it can also be scaled up and down depending on issues or on demand or on an area that requires a little bit more emphasis than other areas as well. So there's that as well. So you know, anyone who doesn't move on before the specified time would be in breach of the bylaw as well. So and then there's a communication piece, I suppose, between our summer ambassadors and our enforcement teams at night time as well.
And just to add to that too, I think, Amy, just a reminder that we have an excellent request for service system. So you can use the SnapSend Solve app, or you can call our customer service team, and Amy and the regulatory team monitor those daily, those requests. And if we see any areas of concern that we hear from the community about, we can do some more targeted enforcement as well. So that's a good tool that we would encourage the community to use as well if they've got any concerns about any breaches of the bylaw, if you know, once a bylaw is adopted. I don't have any other questions coming through, so we will look through all those questions after the webinar and make sure we've covered them off and provide a written response where possible to some of those as well. So if there's no other questions, Campbell, did you want to wrap up?
Yep, I would love to. So thank you everyone for attending. I just wanted to reiterate that regardless of your thoughts on the bylaw, your feedback is really important, whether you support certain proposed changes or you're against them, and why you might be. Any ideas, any thoughts and feelings about the proposed the proposed changes in the draft bylaw, really important. Please let us know, even if it's something that might not necessarily be controlled by a bylaw. It's still really valid feedback for us to have for our responsible camping strategy as well. So please jump online to the Let's Talk page. If you want to find that, you can just go to the homepage. That's letstalk.qldc.govt.nz. You should be able to find the Freedom Camping page pretty quickly on the homepage there. Have a look at the statement of the proposal, the interactive map, and please make a submission. I think, as was earlier covered, you can do that on the submission form there online, or you can email or post in your thoughts as well. And that closes on the 8th, Friday, the 8th of August. So thank you very much for attending. I believe you should all receive a recording of this as well if you want to check in on anything you've heard, and we'll be putting that recording as well online too, so people can watch that if they missed this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.